What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined by two of the titans in this industry who have been holding it down in my absence, and they've done such a spectacular job. Jurg and Dame, fellas, how are we today?
I'm doing good, boys. I'm doing good. It was a pretty good day at work. Pretty good weather up here in good old Bristol, CT, which I really need because the next couple of days we're going to get snow, and I'm not going to look forward to get to work and all that. But I'm having a good time up here, and of course, as always, one of the highlights of my Thursdays, it's for us getting a talk shop here on the Somewhat Sports Podcast.
Chris is back, so you know how I'm doing. Not that great, but other than that, snow's coming. Like Jerk said, that's not great. Got to be up early in the morning working for that. But while Chris is living the luxury life of a stay-at-home something,
A stay-at-home podcast host.
yeah. So here we are.
Hey, I'm glad we have our fearless leader back. I missed you, Chris.
Oh, I missed you guys too. I mean, I missed you, Jurg. I missed you. I almost slipped up there and said you guys, but I missed you, Jurg.
It's
Yeah.
close one.
Yeah, it was an interesting 2 weeks, but I listened to the episodes with you guys, and you guys killed it as expected. Times are moving. Times are moving. We're moving. Sports are moving. And certain sports are definitely moving because we are right around the corner, fellas. With the NFL playoffs, and I know I'm excited. I know I'm just gonna guess that you two are excited as well.
Yes, sir.
Dame.
I mean, my Jets aren't going to be in it, but it is what it is. I'm more excited for NFL draft than the playoffs, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I mean, if your basis for happiness is the Jets making the playoffs, and I'm a Jets fan as well, it's gonna take a bit. It's gonna take a bit, but
I'll be
it's
excited.
it's all right because look, we're gonna talk about the NFL playoff picture. We're not gonna really dive deep into predictions. We're gonna save that for next week, but we're gonna talk about possible matchups that could occur based on Week 18 outcomes because there are some important games that will occur that will shape the playoff picture. And of course, we have NHL news as well, which ours truly Jurg will cover. So NHL news, NFL news, just stacked everywhere, fellas. And you know what? Let's get right to it. Jurg, as always, my man, you start us off brilliantly with NHL news. So what do you got for us this week, bud?
I have what I have been kind of teasing slash, alluding to these last couple weeks, boys. We're relatively speaking, we're getting close to that halfway point of the season. We're not necessarily there in part because games got canceled due to COVID, in part because, well, actually, no, that is the main thing when I think about it because the Olympic break wouldn't have even hit that. But with that, I think it's right around time. We're well over 30 games into the season for the most part. I think it's time that we give some grades at this point of the season here, fellas, and that I talk about teams that have disappointed me and teams that I'm impressed by. Now, of course, we're not going to do all that today. Today is just the teams that have disappointed, whereas most likely next week, barring unforeseen circumstances, next week will be the 5 teams that have greatly surprised me with how they've performed so far this season. I think it'll be some unexpected teams on that list. This list, however, I think most people are probably going to have a good guess of at least 3 or 4 of the 5 that I'm going to say. Maybe there might be a surprise in there, but I think the hockey community as a whole, when they hear this list, I think for the most part they'll agree like, oh, yeah, it's a solid list. And getting the hockey community to agree on anything seems to be like a challenge nowadays. So, moving on. We will begin with the first team I have. This is kind of you could kind of sort it from 5-1 with the way I'm doing it here, so we'll just say 5-1. Let me start with the first team, Les Canadiens de Montréal. The Montreal Canadiens, of course, last year's Stanley Cup finalist, losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup final, having that kind of finish to the season, and having the hopes that they could come back this season and try to prove all the people wrong. They haven't done that by any stretch of the imagination. They are 7-23-4 at this point of the season. Only 18 points in the standings. Just nothing has gone right for Montreal really ever since last year's Stanley Cup Finals ended, with the sudden retirement due to injury of Shea Weber, with Carey Price stepping away from the game due to mental health needs and making sure that he's all right. Of course, I've said it before, but shout out to Carey Price. Hope that his journey to being 100% there again is going well for his sake and his family, of course. Most importantly, the team has just not performed this season. Like, they have very few bright spots at this point. I would honestly only argue that Nick Suzuki is the lone bright spot to this team. Tyler Toffoli's impact is not the way it was last season. Josh Anderson is still just a not a good contract at all. Jeff Petrie only has 2 points in 27 games. He's supposed to be their number one defenseman now, technically speaking, so that's not good at all. Montreal is just simply put, they've struggled. Like I said, they only have 18 points. The only team they're above in the standings are the Arizona Coyotes. That's not anything. That's not even a bar to jump. Like it'd be like it's like you're just walking on the beach and it's sand. Like the Arizona Coyotes are like even beneath the sand on the beach. Like
Wow.
this is nothing to say for Montreal. So the fact that there's only one team better than them, it sucks. Like you probably should have. There was definitely fall off expected. I did not expect Montreal to make the playoffs this season. I thought that relatively speaking, they had some luck last year with the way the standings and everything shook out. And I didn't think they'd be this bad, but I think when you compact everything and how much they've lost, I think that's the ultimate thing. The one good thing I'll say is that they got rid of that stooge Bergevin. That's a good thing, but now they only want to hire a specific general manager. So old habits die hard, Montreal. But yeah, I would say Montreal is definitely fifth most disappointing because like I had some expectations that they'd at least be competitive, but not a playoff team. But this is just bad to say the very least here, fellas.
I mean, but Jurg, you talked about the manager thing. Is there anything else? Are there any pros that they could kind of build upon, or anything going for them going forward that they could be excited about, or at least fans could be excited about?
I think the positives to take in this team is that I think they have a decent prospect pool. I think they have a couple prospects here in the next couple years that could be coming up through the NHL. Hopefully, they don't screw up the development and then allow them to leave in restricted free agency after a couple of years. Can you hear me? But I think for Montreal, if you have to look at a positive right now, I think it's just the fact that if you hope that a couple of these players can A, get healthy because you can't trade players if they're injured, and B, if some of these guys could start to pick up their play a little bit, I think Montreal has some pretty good trade pieces that they could sell off to really signal a new. Because I think with this team, had Montreal came into the season the way they were last year, like if Shea Weber had stayed, if Carey Price didn't need to take time off at the start of the season, then you could only do two things with a team like that. You got to blow it all up because you know they can't win the cup, or you need to make one final push and like literally go all in on the team. And I think because of mitigating circumstances, I don't think they'll have a chance to go all in. They kind of sort of were trying to do something, not going all in, but stay relatively competitive and hope Carey Price could have carried them again, but obviously that hasn't happened. So I think you look at this team, there's pieces they could sell off. Jonathan Drouin only has 1 year left after the season. Ben Sherratt has been a highly coveted trade piece, I think, for that defensive core. Joel Edmondson as well. I think those are two guys you could get some really good assets back for in trades at the deadline. Even though they only just signed him this past offseason, it's not a great look on an organization to trade a guy less than a year after you sign him, but I think Mike Hoffman, you have to consider trading him. Not a great start to the season. Maybe if he could pick it up, perhaps the same with Toffoli. I have no hope that anyone wants to take Anderson, but perhaps Toffoli, year two in the deal, if he could pick up the scoring kind of what he did last season, then perhaps that. So I think if there's Montreal, there's hope that you can restock the minor leagues. And I think that's what the goal needs to be for this team because I let's be real here. Even if they had Carey Price, like God, he would need to be the literal embodiment of the hockey gods in one player to have this team even be respectable to this point. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised because Carey Price can be that damn good. But even still, he would deserve better. Speaking of teams that should be better, of deserving, but well, speaking of deserving better, the Philadelphia Flyers fans deserve better because the Philadelphia Flyers are once again disappointed. I kind of want to rank them higher here, but I also had some expectations that they'd be a little bit disappointing going into the season. The Philadelphia Flyers are 13, 14, and 6, good for fifth in the Metropolitan Division right now, and well behind the fourth place spot. I believe Pittsburgh is in fourth, so that's not good for Philadelphia Flyer fans, and they're about, I want to say 10 to 11 points behind them in the standings, which is, yes, it can be made up for with a good winning streak, but how likely is this Flyers team to go on that winning streak? My thing with this Philadelphia Flyers team is that last season, the big story was the disappointment of Carter Hart and how last season was just not a good year for the kid. He struggled a lot. I really, looking back, I think it's hard to say. I think he just wasn't there last season with it being so short. And I think legitimately he just did not play to the same level as he had done in seasons past. And I think that played a part. I think mentally he wasn't there last season. But it's changed this year. Carter Hart's actually played exceptional for the most part for the Flyers. His goals against average is only 2.76, which in today's NHL is not bad. His save percentage is just under 920, which you want that from your goaltending. And despite that, he only has a 7-9-4 record. And kind of what I say in the NFL, boys, how wins aren't exactly a quarterback stat. You can't necessarily put wins totally on the goalie in today's NHL. You just can't do that. And I don't think you can do that. And it's not fair to Carter Hart to be able to do that. The Philadelphia Flyers, ultimately, they're supposed to be a tough team. They made some additions on the defensive core. I spoke about it back in our NHL offseason review, that they made some big time trades to try to increase the talent on the blue line. And overall, like it sort of helped. I do think the defense is better than they were last season, but it's not to the level that it would really show, because you're still getting some struggling performances here and there from Carter Hart. Martin Jones as the backup goalie is Martin Jones. I can't really say more or less about that. And this team is suffering as a result. They have a negative 24 goal differential on the season. That's not good by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, well, Jurg, do you think they're having buyer's remorse?
So the funny part is that I wouldn't necessarily say they should be having it, because I don't think the Rasmus Ristolainen deal has been too bad. Now, he's not necessarily producing. I don't know if he's going to... I think he should still reach about 30 points, which is about his career average, around 30 to 40 point mark. What I think this team needs to think about more is actually potentially making another move here, because their offense has been really bad this season. Like I said, with the negative 24 goal differential, they need more offense straight up. And whether you get that from the blue line in and of itself, or whether you get that from your forwards, this team just needs to score more. Because like I said, Carter Hart is playing great. Like these are really good numbers. These are really good numbers that he's putting up, like a 2.76 goals against. It's not a like spectacular out of this world. Like he'd have to be below 2.5 goals against for that. But he's not playing bad when you consider last season, man. So I think this team needs to score more to support him, because they've lost a couple of games here where it's like, yes, the defense and the goaltending are allowing some goals, but like you need to be able to win in today's NHL some of these high scoring games. And they're just not doing that on a consistent basis. So the Philadelphia Flyers, they need to get together offensively. That's the key for them. Number 3 here, Chris, I know you're going to be disappointed. The Seattle Kraken.
Fuck.
Last in their division this year, only 24 points on the standings. It's just not good. 10-19-4 start for this team. Phil Grubauer and Chris Driedger. Phil Grubauer, a Vezina Trophy finalist last season. Chris Driedger, a guy who a lot of people were saying would be a starting goalie this year. They have not looked good in that at all. And I think that is just the exclamation point to what has just been a rough start for the franchise in its history. I think the thing is, and the reason why I had expectation for the Kraken coming into the season was because I felt the Pacific was wide open. Not because of what Vegas did. It's like, oh, Vegas was successful, Seattle has to be successful, because that's not a fair standard. Vegas made it to the damn Stanley Cup final in year one. I think Seattle, while they're talented, while there is some talent there, I don't think it was right to set those expectations. And I think we're seeing it right here, because this team, like, it just has not worked for them here in year one, point blank.
But so wait, what are the mistakes they've made as a franchise, like that has led to this?
I think everything stems to the start of the organization. I know a lot of people have respect for Ron Francis, but I just think he completely botched the beginning moves of the franchise. You need to have a good expansion draft if you're an incoming team, and you need to make the right first head coach hire. I kind of alluded to it before. I am not a fan, looking back at the expansion draft at all, for this team. They could have done so much more. They could have made so many better selections, whether it would have been to be more of a contender, or whether it would have been to just bulk up the prospect system a little bit more than what it is. Like, they're just not good selections looking back. I think that could be a special episode we do one time. Maybe if we ever like make a Patreon or something, like a
Oh,
redraft of the...
oh,
Oh, no, shush. But maybe one day in the distant future, like a redraft of the expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken, because it was bad. Now, granted, I'd really have to do my research and see who's available, so that's why I'm saying that'd be a long-term project. But irregardless, yeah, I think the expansion draft was really wrong. Ron Francis tried to not burn bridges, and I think, like, as a GM, you need to be bold sometimes. And the problem is, in hockey, not a lot of people are bold enough. So I think that's where disappointment comes from it for me personally. And also the Dave Haxtell hire. I'm sorry, I tried to give it a chance. I really did. But Dave Haxtell is just not a good NHL coach, man. He cannot be a leader of men. And I was wondering if he could have maybe been the guy just at the very beginning, like, okay, a temporary placeholder before they find their guy. No, not at all. They need to fire him. When was the last expansion sports team that fired their head coach in year one, or just after year one? I really want to see that stat, but I think Dave Haxtell needs to go straight up in the offseason. I was very, I was not a fan of the hire, and this has only confirmed that. Like,
you were
it's...
bearish.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Chris. I was bearish on the hire from the beginning, and the season has only confirmed that it's not looking good. And they still need more talent. Like I said, like the defense. The thing is that they tried to draft a team to be competitive and grindy and tough. That doesn't win just on that alone in the NHL anymore, man. You need skill, you need talent, and they tried to make up for it in the free agency class. They didn't do their job well enough. They just didn't. So that's why Seattle's at my number 3. My number 2 team, I really want to put this goddamn team at number 1, but I have to put him at number 2 because I'm being fair here, relatively speaking. The Chicago Blackhawks. Uh,
Oh, isn't this your favorite team?
yes, it is, and I can't even blame this goddamn I can't even blame Bowman on everything with this organization anymore because he thankfully got fired earlier in the season because he's a scumbag. The Chicago Blackhawks are 11, 17, and 5 right now, 27 points. They're a lot better than what they started the season. They were like winless in their first God, I take it out of my mind, but I want to say we were winless in like our first 11 or 12 games or something like that before we finally got our first win of the season. We're only better than Seattle and Arizona in the West. That's not saying a lot. And if you include the East, we're better than Ottawa and Montreal. And just Jesus Christ, like that, literally there are zero expectations. It's like expecting a 5-year-old to be able to do 1+1. Like, just dear God. Simply put, Chicago has been a disappointment all around. Marc-Andre Fleury, that he is trying so hard. Like that dude deserves so much more. He's the Vezina Trophy winner from last season. He deserved a better exit from Vegas, and he deserves better than what he's getting in Chicago. Free Marc-Andre Fleury, man. But my feelings aside, this team has just not played well. It's so much inconsistency. They had a little stretch there where they were trying to convince people, and I have my friends who are hockey fans that are just like, Jared, give them a chance. They might turn around. Da, da, da. No, this team is not turning around. I have zero belief in this team to turn it around. I did not want this, by the way, going into the season, but we'll talk about it another time. I'm
So
just
what? So Jerk, what should have they done this past summer for you to be feeling better?
they should have stuck with the rebuild. Bowman said
Mm.
before last season that they were going to commit to a rebuild. And while I think he's a scumbag, and I'm happy that he's not in the organization anymore, that was the one smart thing he said or done within the last couple of years, and said that the team should have been a rebuild. And you know what he did the season after he said that they were going to rebuild? He traded 2 first-round picks and our top prospect defenseman for a defenseman in Seth Jones. Now, I like Seth Jones. I really do. Personally, I like Seth Jones. I have a jersey of him from when he was first drafted in the NHL. I've always been a Seth Jones fan. And this season, he's been playing great offensively. But why did you have to trade so much for him? Why? Like, that's what pissed me off. You traded our top prospect defenseman. You traded our, I think we had God, I forget where the pick was at this point, but it was, I think, a top 10 draft pick. And you traded a draft pick this season, gambling on the fact that the team would be good. And guess what? We're not. So it's just frustration with a team that currently has a negative 35 goal differential right now. And if you want me to get into the specifics of the team, the offense needs to get a lot better. Like they need to find more of a scoring touch with this organization. And good God, man, if you really want me to figure out a way to just improve the team as is constructed, that entire defense needs to be changed. Connor Murphy is a minus 16. Jake McCabe is a minus 14. Calvin DeHaan is a minus 13. And Seth Jones is a minus 8. That's actually not too bad considering the offense he's producing. But still, like, just it's so bad in Chicago right now, man. Like that used to be the proudest organization in the league. And then the scandal that's erupted since the end of last season going into the summer, the terrible moves that have been made, like Jesus Christ, man. Like I don't want to talk about this anymore. Moving on to my number 1 disappointment this season. God damn, I hate my team right now. I hate my team. I hate Bowman too. Fuck you, Bowman. Moving on to my number 1 disappointing team into the season, the back-to-back Eastern Conference finalists the last 2 seasons, the New York Islanders. Because, oh dear God, the Islanders struggled this season. 10, 12, and 6 to start. They've definitely rebounded from that rough start, but it's still not looking great with this team overall. Like, the Islanders, it's funny here, Chris, because I think they're at both ends of the spectrum for me. They're the most disappointing team, but they're also the team that I have the most belief that they'll be able to make up for this rough start. You know?
But like, haven't they done this like before? Like where they start off slow and then they pick it up. Like, do you see that happening again, or do you think
And
it's
that
time's run out in terms of like their luck catching up?
that honestly, that is why I have the belief, because Barry Trotz is so good. His structure is so good. The way he coaches is so good. I fully believe that this team is going to go on another Cinderella run. They're going to at least be a playoff contender. I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs at the end of the season. But at the same time, like you're saying, they've done this a couple times in recent years, and like it's bound to catch up to them, and they're going to run into that unlucky first round matchup, and they're going to get cooked probably in the first round or maybe the second round. Like, you can't keep doing this forever. And I think more than anything this season, this team just cannot score. I've talked about the offensive deficiencies of the Blackhawks and the Flyers. The Islanders have 64 goals. That's the worst in the league. That's worse than Arizona. That's worse than Ottawa. That's worse than everyone. So you need to pick it up. Like, the defense is fine. Sorokin has been pretty good to start the season. Varlamov hasn't played a lot. I think he's definitely struggling being in and out and all that stuff. And, but his stats actually aren't that bad with a 2.77 goals against and a save percentage of about 910. That's not terrible honestly. It's not. So this team's defense will always be good. They need to start scoring. If they don't do that, then they won't make that run. But if we were to assume that they're going to go on this run here eventually, then it'll catch up to them this time in the playoffs. I don't see a third year in a row where they get lucky in making it to the conference finals with this type of play style, especially with how bad it's been. So that's all I got to say about them. And yeah, those were my 5 most disappointing teams that I have coming into the season. All for varying reasons, all for varying sets of expectations coming in. But those are the 5 that I have selected. And I think, like I said, for the most part, I think a lot of NHL fans would agree with it.
Beautiful. A beautiful 20-minute segment on NHL. Jurg, there's no one better. No one else could do what you do.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
let's move on over to the NFL, where, fellas, we are at the end of the regular season, of course. We're recording Thursday, but this Sunday will be the last week for the NFL's regular season, week 18. That's right, we're going 18 weeks this time. Standings, there's a bunch of teams have clinched playoff berth. Let's talk about the current seedings, and then we'll talk about possible matchups that will occur. And then we'll also talk about teams that are in the hunt, that are still not clinched, but are on the verge of clinching. And yeah, so we'll start off with the AFC, American Football Conference, baby. We got the Titans in first place, which means they would have the bye. And then the Kansas City Chiefs at second place, Bengals third, Bills fourth, and Patriots fifth. I think the Bills and the Patriots are tied right now as I'm looking at the records. And then right after them, those are the 5 teams that have clinched playoff berth. Sixth place so far, we have the Indianapolis Colts. Seventh place, the Los Angeles Chargers. And then tied with both those teams is Las Vegas Raiders, and then a game behind them is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 8-7-1, and then we also have the Baltimore Ravens at 8-8. Now, I think the Titans play the Texans this week on Sunday, and I think we could all agree that the Titans should, lock this one up, and then they will eventually achieve first place officially, and then that means they'll get the bye, which I think is a good wonderful news for them because Derrick Henry is apparently coming back, and I think the more rest, the more time off, the better for them, and the better for Derrick Henry to kind of get into the swing of things because I believe he fractured his foot, right? So like, yeah, I think as much time off as possible is good for him and him to kind of like get back into like reps and all that. Chiefs, man, the Chiefs really blew it with that Bengals loss, man, because they had first place, they had the bye right there, but then the Bengals, shout out to them, they beat the Chiefs. And so the Bengals clinched. And I think, Jurg, who are the Bills playing next? I think they play the Jets. Yeah, they play the Jets. So
Yeah,
I think
this
the
last
Bills
week
should be
they
taking
play
care
the
of.
Jets and the Pats play the Dolphins.
Okay, so I would say the Pats are the wild card there because I think they have a tougher opponent, but I still think they could win. Okay, so the Bills clinched the AFC East division title with a win or a New England loss or both of them tie. But all they need to do, I think, is win. So we would have the first 5 set, and then the Colts. The Colts play.
They played the Jaguars.
So the Colts play the Jaguars. They should be taking care of business there. And then the Chargers play, I believe, the
The
Raiders.
Raiders. Yep.
See, this is the game that I think will decide who gets the last playoff spot.
Yeah.
So guys, I think we're all in unison here that, I mean, not to pick favorites, but I think we all want the Chargers to be that team to kind of, be the last team to like enter the playoffs because I think we're all Justin Herbert fans. No offense to the Raiders, but like, Herbert is that guy, and
No.
that's
Full offense to the Raiders. We don't want them
okay.
in the
All right,
playoffs.
you got it. Yeah, they've been a dumpster fire, but yeah. So I think the Colts. I think so far, I know the Colts aren't clinched yet, but I think the Colts will actually make it. They'll take care of business with the Jaguars, so that'll be our 6th seed. Our 6 seats solidified, and then it'll be Chargers Raiders. Are you guys giving any shots for the Steelers or the Ravens to make it, Dame?
But
Do you think any possibility?
before you go there, Jags. I mean, the Colts haven't beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2014. So let's
Mm,
not get ahead of ourselves.
okay, all right.
Because I don't know if you saw a scenario, but if the Jaguars do beat the Colts, the if the Raiders and Chargers could agree to tie
Yes.
in the game, and they could both make it. So that would be a super interesting situation that I am 1,000% praying for. Not because I don't want the Colts in the playoffs. I just want to see what the Raiders and Chargers will do. But Other than that, the Steelers, I do give him a shot against the Ravens because I don't know if Lamar Jackson is gonna play, and even if he does play, he hasn't played in what like 3 weeks, so he might be a little rusty and stuff. So I'm definitely gonna give the Steelers a shot. Do I think they're gonna win? I don't know, probably not, but just based off the fact that Lamar Jackson's coming back from an ankle injury where he's primarily obviously a running quarterback, that could definitely limit him and limit what that offense could do.
Yeah, I mean, man, the Ravens have had such a tough season, bro. They had so many injuries before the season started, and now Lamar Jackson, the horrible timing in terms of like getting hurt towards the tail end of the season. Yeah, they're likely going to miss the playoffs. But predictions here, fellas. Do we think the Chargers take this against the Raiders?
I personally do.
Yeah,
I think so too. I mean, yeah. I mean, I was a little concerned when they lost to the Texans, but I think they'll pick it up. I think everyone will be back from protocols. So, and Herbert will do his thing. Eckler's, I think, is going to be fully healthy at this point. So that would mean, if our predictions are right, we would have Tennessee Titans, Kansas City Chiefs, Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Indianapolis Colts, and then the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think that's a pretty solid, you know, uh, core of playoff teams. I think the Bengals play. Oh, the Bengals play the Browns, but I do think a lot of them, like Burrow, I think is resting. I
Yeah,
think a lot of the other players will
hmm
be resting. But they did clinch their division.
they can only go as low as the fourth seed.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, if we think the Bengals will lose and the Bills win, that would give us a Bengals Patriots. I mean, either way, shout out to the Bengals for actually making it this far. Man, the Joe Burrow era. Wow. Like he has looked so good. And like ever since he came back from injury, I didn't think he looked this good, man. I didn't think he looked this good, but for some reason, I don't know why. I don't know if it'll actually happen at any point, but I would love to see a Bengals Chargers matchup down the line, so we could see that Herbert Burrow um matchup. But yeah, so that would mean Chiefs versus the Chargers, and man, that would be. Ooh, we're not going to talk about predictions yet. We're not going to do that yet. But man, Chiefs versus Chargers, that's a must watch. That is a
If
must watch.
if I may,
Yeah.
if I can just present a point of discussion because this actually is prevalent. So at work today, we had the rundown for the afternoon show. One of the topics was teams that would be dangerous, like the team that would least want to see the Chargers and the Raiders in the playoffs. And we, for the segment, what the talent decided was that the team that would least want to see the Chargers for the playoffs is the Chiefs. And I want to present that to you guys. Do you agree with the assessment that if the Chiefs cannot get lucky and they can't get the first round bye this year, because to get the first round bye, they would need to win, the Titans would need to lose. Um, if the Chiefs cannot get the first round bye and they saw the Chargers in the first round, how realistic of a shot do you think is that the Chiefs could get knocked out in the wild card round?
I think heavily realistic, to be honest. I would. I wouldn't be as like if I'm the Chiefs, I wouldn't be like crazy scared because they've been there and the Chargers are relatively new to the playoffs. But I don't know, man. Like that, the Chargers have always had their number, especially in this Herbert era. I mean, they beat them once this year, and then the second time when the Chiefs won, it went to overtime, and the Chargers almost had that game. So I would be very very scared if I was the Chiefs. But I mean, overall, I would love to see a great game, and I think that's what we'll get. But I would be scared. I would be. Dame.
I I mean I know they've had some really tough matchups throughout the regular season. The Chargers beat them in the first meeting, but personally, if I was the Chiefs, I wouldn't be too worried about the Chargers. Not because I don't think they're a great team, not because Justin Herbert I don't think is great, but I mean Justin Herbert hasn't been in playoffs yet. He hasn't been put on that biggest stage yet, like he would be if he went to Arrowhead in the first round of the playoffs in Patrick Mahomes' house in the cold weather. Matter of fact, because Arrowhead and KC gets cold in the playoffs, especially, and might be even snow. And I don't know if Justin Herbert's ever played in the snow. Played college ball at Oregon. Seems like a kid from LA. He's obviously playing in LA now. So based on weather conditions, the whole playoff experience, big spotlight stuff, obviously playing away as well. Like I think that's going to present a very tough matchup for Justin Herbert and the Chargers because that team overall is just very young. So I don't really know how they're going to respond. So I definitely have a lot of confidence in the Chiefs to win that game. If I had to pick a team that I would be worried about if I was a Chiefs fan that the Chiefs would face would be a team like the Colts. Reason being is because that's the kind of team that no matter where they go, that team could beat you because of their style of play. Their formula to win isn't based off a quarterback that just needs to sling the ball. Their formula to win is pound the ball on the ground, keep possession, keep it away from the other team's offense, which obviously is KC's strength, their offense, and keeping that their offense on the field and scoring points. But if you don't have the ball, when the Colts are just running it down the Chiefs' throat, it's going to be hard for the Chiefs to score, and especially with a defense like the Chiefs had that takes the ball away as well. That would be present another problem for the Chiefs. So personally, I don't see the Chargers as a big threat due to their inexperience and style of play. But the Colts, on the other hand, I think that would present an extremely big challenge for the Chiefs.
Yeah. But I also think if the Bills move up to third place, and then I think they would draw the Colts, unless like the Pats also. But I think who if the Patriots and the Colts both have the same record, who would be fifth place? Would it be the Colts or the Pats? If it's a tiebreaker,
Then they play each other. I think
I
whoever
don't
wins
know.
will be.
Yeah, the Colts beat them.
So the
The
Colts
Colts
would
beat
have a
them, so
better
then
chance.
Colts would draw fifth, right?
Yes, because if the Pats lose, so the thing is that if the Pats lose and the Colts win, they would have the same conference record, but the Colts would have the better divisional record, and they also have the head-to-head win.
Okay,
So
so Colts would move up, right?
yes,
Okay. Either way, I think the point is here. If I'm the Bills, I would want to avoid the Colts because, man, I think the Colts. I think last year the Colts almost beat them right in their first play.
well
I think it was the
But
first.
they
this
smoked them
year,
this season. Jonathan Taylor
Jonathan Allen had
destroyed
5
them.
touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor.
I'm just saying it just started last year when you saw that crack, but now that you see like Taylor just emerging, the Bills, man, I think there's I think I agree with Damien. I think the Colts are a problem for everyone, but man, the Bills because I feel like because they've been so predicated on trying to beat the Chiefs, like they forgot about the other teams in this conference. But yeah, man, I think there's a lot of potential upsets, quote unquote upsets, that could occur in this first round. But I'm just excited for these matchups, to be honest. Like, I think this could go either way. I think there's no heavy favorite in the AFC. Look, the Bengals did make it. Now, before we move on over to the NFC, guys, is there any? They're all tough matchups. They all are. But is there any favorable? Is there any favorable matchups for the Bengals that you guys could see? Like, I think they're so offense heavy, and I think teams kind of beef up their defense in the playoffs, so it's going to be a little tough for them. And again, first playoff appearance for Joe Burrow, for Jamar Chase. So Dame, is there? I think that's the one team. Them and the Chargers would be kind of the newbies here. Is there a favorable matchup for the Bengals in the first round?
That
Who's a team they wouldn't
obviously,
mind seeing? I know it's hard to
I
answer,
think
but
it'd be the Chargers, honestly. But
yeah.
it's going to be hard for that to happen because the Bengals probably are going to lose this game because they're resting all their starters. So they're probably going to be the lowest possible seed based off division winners. So they probably won't see
So
the
they play the
Chargers. But
Pats or Colts.
yeah, exactly. Because they're probably going to stay the 4 seed. And the Chargers, I don't think they can move up from the 7 or 6. So but that's who I would say would be the easiest matchup because the Patriots obviously would be an extremely tough matchup because of the way Bill Belichick has his defense playing and the way he usually has success against young quarterbacks. Although I wouldn't really compare Joe Burrow to Justin Herbert. The way I talked about Justin Herbert and how I'm not that confident in experience, but on the other hand, Joe Burrow, I've seen him in the biggest stage in the national championship for LSU,
Mm.
game after game in that entire season, in the playoffs, in the national championships, just on the biggest stage, no matter what, the lights are the brightest, he put on an absolute show. He did not seem under pressure at all. He didn't seem nervous at all. None of that stuff. So personally, I've seen Joe Burrow do it on the biggest stage. On the other hand, I haven't seen really Justin Herbert do that. So I have a lot more confidence in Joe Burrow in the playoffs than I do Justin Herbert. And although Colts and Patriots are both tough matchups because of that, both their
Hmm.
defenses are extremely good and it could slow down that high-powered offense because as long as you slow down that offense, like you can score on them. Their defense isn't that good. They have a couple good playmakers here and there with Trey Hendrickson rushing the passer, and he's had like half a sack in like 11 straight games or something like that. But overall, that defense can be scored on. As you saw with the Chiefs in the first half this past week, like pretty sure they scored on like every drive until the second half.
Mm-hmm.
But even the Patriots offense, which I'm not too fond of, and obviously the Colts offense passing the ball, I'm not too fond of. I think both those offenses could definitely score points on that Bengals defense, and as long as they can not even completely shut out the Bengals offense, as long as they can slow them down and not have them explode, I think those two teams have very good shots against them. So if I was the Bengals, I try to win this game to try to somehow get a shot at playing the Chargers and having the Chiefs and Bills move down, but I don't see that happening. So I think the Bengals are in for a tough matchup either way.
Mm. I mean, look, Dame, I think I could speak for all of us. A Bengals Chargers matchup. That I think that would be like the most fun of like all the matchups because I think obviously you said Burrow is he has experience playing at the grandest stage, at the biggest stage. So like you don't think he's gonna get as shook as like Herbert. But I think it would be an even playing field because it's all like these young guys, it's these young teams who are entering the playoffs for the first time in a while. I think,
Both these quarterbacks are
wow,
from the same draft class too.
yeah, you're right, you're right. And it's like that's the conversation that's been occurring. It's like Herbert or Burrow, who's better? And I think, I mean, it's so hard to answer like right now because and both of them are bringing their. I mean, we assume that the Chargers are going to make it, but both of them are like they brought their teams from the ground up. Essentially, I'm not saying both teams are trash, even though the Bengals kind of were. I think the
Nah,
Chargers were just
Bengals
a
are
little bit better.
garbage. They had the first pick in the draft.
I'm being nice. I'm being nice.
No,
Um,
no.
but they're bringing their teams back to relevancy, and I think what a way to like have like a one up in debates if like you beat that other quarterback in a playoff matchup, and then bringing your team into the second round, like that's huge. That's huge. But yeah, before we move on over to the NFC, Jurg, do you have anything to say about what we just talked about?
I mean, I think overall with the Bengals, I just think this team is so interesting coming in because like kind of what Dane talked about, like with Herbert and the Chargers, like they don't have the experience at this stage. Some of those guys, like there are a couple older players on the team, but for the most part, this is a pretty young team. Like, yes, I know Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they won a championship together at college. Like Joe Burrow's played in big games before, technically speaking, but he hasn't played at the NFL playoffs. So like, kind of to your question, like I don't see a matchup necessarily fully favoring them because my thing is that like of the teams they could face, like maybe you favor them on one side of the ball, but not the other. Like if they face the Patriots, let's be real here. Bill Belichick can break down any offense, can break down any quarterback. He finds a way to take away your best weapon. And if anyone could take away Jamar Chase for a playoff game, it'd be Bill Belichick. But and at the same time, like the Bengals defense, I think would be a pretty good, have a good shot against the Pats offense, but not not overwhelming. I think them and the Colts. I think they could definitely Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase could definitely attack the Colts secondary, but then it's Jonathan Taylor, right? So I just think overall at the end of the and then if we can't get it, but if I wish we could get Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert here early, but we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to wait for that. But yeah, no, I just think the Bengals, and we've kind of seen from them too. They've been a little inconsistent this season, so it's like we don't really know what to expect from them come the
Yeah,
playoffs.
they
I think
lost to Mike White and the Jets.
I mean, future Hall of Famer Mike White.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
speaking,
you're right. You're right. You're right.
so I think all we have to do is we just wait. Of course, just like last season, we're going to be doing playoff predictions on this podcast, and I think what we have to do is that we just got to wait to see what the playoff matchup is, who they draw, and we just go from there. But I think like we can't count them out as an easy game because like the Bengals, they've earned a lot of people's respect this season.
Yeah, yeah. No doubt. All right, let's move on over to the NFC. I think this is a little easier because there's still some like holes to fill in the AFC, whereas the NFC is all the teams are basically set in stone, besides like the last wild card spot, which is between the Niners and the Saints. But before we get on to that part of it, so the Packers at first, and I think do we all agree that the Packers are clinching the division?
Well,
They
The
did.
conference, the
I think
They
conference.
did.
yeah, they
They
already
did.
did. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Packers already won. They get the bye. Second place so far, as I'm looking at the standings, we got the Rams. Third place, the Bucks. Fourth place, the Cowboys. Cardinals fifth. Eagles sixth. As of now, and then it'll be between no, actually the Niners are sixth, Eagles seventh, but I think the Eagles are clinched
Yeah.
um first. Yeah, yeah. So all right, let's talk about this. Rams. Here we go. Rams, I think, play the Niners. And I think if the Rams they clinch the NFC West with a win, of course, or an Arizona loss, but all they need to do is win, and they play the Niners. Let's see. The Bucks. Who do they play?
The Bucks play the
Mm,
Panthers.
Carolina,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
Bucks play the Panthers. I think we could all agree that's a W for them. And then the Cowboys, they
Don't they
play
play
the Eagles,
Washington?
right?
Oh, the Eagles.
No,
Yeah,
they play
my
the
bad.
Eagles. So that one,
My
I
bad.
think that could go either way, to be honest. No offense, Gallo, if he's listening. And then I think the Cardinals play Seattle. They would need to win, and they would need the Rams to lose for them to clinch the NFC West division. So yeah, I think these top 5 seeds are kind of, well, I mean, 2 through 5 is kind of interchangeable. Um, so how do you guys see it playing out? Like, what do you guys see the standings 2 through 5? Like, how do you see it playing out? Who's gonna end up where? Dame, let me start. Jerry, let me start off with you since we start off with Dame.
I think, and I'm kind of being basic here. I will say there is one flip I do see definitively happening, like that I could see really happening. I think for the most part, it's going to stay the same. I do think the Rams are going to beat the 49ers. I think this would be the game. Like, this is that big statement game, as weird as it is to say about a team with 12 wins going on 13. This is a big time statement game for this Rams team to be like, okay, like we're going to break this little funky streak we've had against the Niners, but also prove ourselves going into the playoffs definitively. I think the Buccaneers should beat the Panthers, despite the lack of weapons that they have on offense, which we'll get to that in a moment. Cowboys, I think, will handle business if they start everyone. They'll handle business against the Eagles, and the Cardinals, I think they should win their game. Main change I could see happening is the fact that I could see Tampa and Dallas swapping, because I think the lack of
Mm.
weapons for Brady, like I think this is the very final game of the regular season. I could see that playing into effect. And Matt Rule, I think he's coaching for his job right now. I know I said this last week, but I think he's coaching for his job right now, like definitively. And if he could get a win like this, would like secure him for next season. That whether he should or shouldn't be, that's a conversation for after the season. Black Monday coming up. If you want to hear coaches that we thought could be fired, check back last week's episode where me and Dane talked about that. But I think I could see that change happening, because I think the Panthers could beat the Bucks. It could be an upset game, and Dallas beating the Eagles, that would make Dallas the third seed, because they would have, if they beat the Eagles, they'd be perfect in the divisional record, and they would also have 10 conference wins, easily more than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in both those categories. So yeah, I think that
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that because I'm like, didn't the Bucks beat the Cowboys head to head? But
they did, but like I don't know, man. Like some of these tiebreakers, because I saw at work today, like the Cowboys can be the third seed. So
okay, all right,
that,
all
that's
right.
why,
So
that's why I mentioned it.
let's just assume the Bucks would win, just because like we, I don't know. I think you're right though. I mean, with Antonio Brown gate and with Godwin out, a lot of shit's happening. But I could still see them beating the Panthers. So, Jurg, you basically have the same exact standings at this point. Damon, would you agree? Do you see any like changes within the 2 through 5 seeds?
Yeah, I don't see any changes, to be honest, because I mean the only I guess I can see the Cardinals going over. Oh no, they can't even go over the Cowboys because the Cowboys are in the division. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean I could see Dallas losing this week and then the Cardinals winning, but it wouldn't matter for seeding wise because Dallas is the division winner. So I don't see the Rams or Tampa losing. Think they're both going to win their games, so I think that's going to stay. And then Dallas are probably going to lose this week, but they're the division winner, so they're automatically locked at that 4 seed. So I don't see any change in the top four.
I think some players in the Cowboys actually like are in protocols right now too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like it's essentially a lock that we're gonna see the Cowboys versus Cardinals first round.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hey man, that's a fun matchup, and I know Damon will have some takes next week, so I'm tuning in for that. Let's go on over to 6th and 7th right now. 6th currently is the 49ers. At their 9-7, Eagles are 9-7, Saints are 8-8. So those are like the Eagles already clinched. Shout out to them actually, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't have the highest expectations for them. So they're at 9-7. They play the Cowboys. Cowboys again. They have some players and protocols. Do you guys have the Eagles winning against the Cowboys? I think Dame just said that he did, right?
I, I don't know if I haven't decided prediction yet. I haven't signed my picks in yet. I got to do that. But I
Okay,
could
well,
definitely
but
see.
you do. Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
can see
Sorry.
it happening, absolutely, because of the fact that the Cowboys do have all these guys on COVID protocol, and if they have enough guys on COVID protocol, I think they might just end up resting a lot of guys because, like I said, their seating can't really change. So I know the Eagles probably with a win or something could move up and stuff. So I could definitely see the Eagles beating the Cowboys this week.
Yeah, and then the Eagles. I mean, if the Niners lose, they drop. Well, the Eagles would go ahead of them. If we do have our predictions right, if the Niners lose and the Eagles win, Eagles will go to 6th place, which means they would have a likely date with the Bucks, which would, it's fun time for everyone. But all right, well, let's talk about, the last playoff team, which would be between the Niners and the Saints. Now, the Niners, I think, have the tougher matchup here because they play the Rams, and then the Saints play the Falcons. Um, the Saints, in order to win, would need in order to make the playoffs, they would need to win, and they would need the Niners to lose. Which, to be honest, high possibility. The Niners clinch playoff berth with just a win. They just need a win. Um, Personally, I think I would like the Niners to make it more than the Saints. I kind of like seeing the Niners play. I just feel like they have like a lot more talent. Um, but if the Saints do make it, well, let me start off with this, Dame. Of those two, well, who do you see making it, and which team do you think would do more damage?
Between who?
The Niners and the Saints. Those are the last two battling out for the wild card spot. So who do
Absolutely.
you,
Without even thinking about it, I know it's the Niners because Saints, who's their quarterback, and if Taysom Hill isn't an answer because he's not a quarterback, he's like a tight end slash running back. So the Niners definitely, hopefully Jimmy G does come back healthy because I think he's a better option than Trey Lance is based on all the
right now? Yeah,
experience and stuff. And he's been a winning quarterback in the playoffs before. He's brought them to the Super Bowl and all that. And obviously, that defense is one of the best in the league, and they've been playing like it's this entire year. So I think their defense is better than the Saints. Their offense is better. Their quarterback is better. Their special teams is better. I guess the only advantage I give him is a head coach because I think Kyle Shanahan is massively overrated. But just off of entire roster and the way they've been playing this season as well, the Niners are absolutely the more feared team for anyone in this conference.
Jurg.
Yeah, he's right. Don't even have to give a second thought about it. It's the 49ers over the Saints. Taysom Hill. Doesn't matter who you start at quarterback. Taysom Hill, Ian Book, Jameis Winston. Jesus Christ. You can bring back Drew Brees for a game for all I care with his fixed up hairline that he totally had to use plugs for. But
Shout out to him though.
yeah. I mean, yeah, he's not a half bad commentary. But it's at the end of the day, it's easily the 49ers. Just Kyle Shanahan can scheme up a rushing attack. Kyle Shanahan could get any of us like 60 yards in a game if we were lining up for him at running back. That dude is just so talented. And yeah, even though I do have the Rams beating the 49ers, obviously that also means I have the Saints losing. Now, if the Saints win, of course, I'm cheering for the 49ers to win the game because I want the 49ers to make it over the Saints because I want somewhat competitive first round game because I don't think it'd
Yes.
be competitive in any way, shape, or form for the Saints. But yeah, New Orleans has to fix a lot, man. And like going into the season, like good for them that they've stayed to till the end because, dude, a lot of people forget after going into the beginning of last offseason, like the Saints were what $90 million over the cap or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. They had to cut so much. They had to make so many changes. They had to do so much to be able to get to this point. Like I'll give them a little bit of credit. They've earned the props of like, okay, it took a lot for them to get here and it wasn't easy. And if Jameis was here, maybe you got a little bit more confidence in them, but they got to this point. And okay, here's your flowers. Now kindly walk off the stage and get out for the season. I want the San Francisco 49ers in there. I think they could be an interesting challenge, especially, if we do end up getting Rams and 49ers for a third time. That hey man, I'm a fan of divisional games headlining the wild card round, and 49ers Rams for a third time, that'd be highly entertaining. So I'm all for it.
I mean, I look. I shout out to the Eagles for making it. But I don't want to see them play the Bucks, man. Fuck this with Tom Brady getting the fucking easy pass here. No, no, no. I would like for the Niners to play the Bucks because I do think that would be a challenge for Tom Brady. I think they would make them sweat. They could actually beat them, in my opinion. Actually, it could possibly happen.
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah, I don't know. I would like the Niners to, yeah. I'm so sick and tired of Brady getting the easy path here. Not taking away from last year, but I mean he did get Washington the first round, and Taylor Heineke wasn't gonna win that matchup. But yeah, I feel like it would be like another form of like last year where they play the Eagles, and shout out to Jalen Hurts, but come on now, like I'd rather the Niners um play them, and they could be a huge upset alert. I know our friend of the show Matt would definitely like that, right, Dame?
Fuck him.
Okay. All right. For the NFC, I think there's like way more interesting matchups. Is there actually? I mean, like I think the top 5 seeds are like really fun teams to watch.
The reason is because if you get to the divisional round and you assume the teams that should win for the most part, like
you're gonna get some high key matchups. Yeah,
the Packers are gonna face, you assume, either the Cowboys or the Cardinals, and then the other matchup. Well, I mean, depending on how everything goes, but like you could get Rodgers Brady in the championship game again, the conference, or you could get them in the divisional round if the Buccaneers drop to the 4th seed and they actually win in the wild card, or you could potentially get Rodgers and Kyler Murray duking at it this time fully healthy, because like that wasn't the case fully last time because Kyler was kind of dinged up or whatever. You could get the Rams and Packers in the NFC Championship game. You could potentially get the Rams. You could get Rams Dallas in the divisional round. You could get Rams Bucks. You could get Rams Bucks in the conference. Like the NFC by far is so entertaining because you could actually see a scenario where, and you can make a case for any of the top 5 teams to really make a go at it. You can. Whereas in the AFC, like I'm trying not to spoil it here, but there's just one team that I think is going to make it there. Like,
do you guys see the Titans making noise with Derrick Henry coming back? I mean, obviously we don't know how he'll play. We don't know how he'll be because a foot fracture, especially for a running back, that's kind of heavy. So I mean, do you guys see the Titans like getting back to form a little bit? I mean, they'll have AJ Brown, they'll have Julio Jones. I'm assuming will be back, and then he's healthy, but like we don't know how healthy Derrick Henry. Like, do you guys see the Titans making noise? Like, I think we all could agree it's the Chiefs. We have the Bills, and then I would say the Colts is like a dark horse. But then I think it depends on Derrick Henry in terms of like if we want to put the Titans there as like teams that we're serious about. Dame, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, it's all gonna depend on Derrick Henry and how he comes back from that injury, because
Mm-hmm.
it was a foot fracture, and he's a really big running back, one of the biggest we've seen in the NFL history. So it's all gonna depend how he comes back. I don't think he's even gonna play this week, so I think his first game back is gonna be that first week of the NFL playoffs. So that's gonna be extremely concerning, to be honest, if I was a Titans fan, because he's had no in-game work before that. And what are you going to go in there and give him 35 touches like you used to when that was your formula to win? I don't think so. So I think that's going to be extremely concerning for them. It's all going to depend on Derrick Henry. And I personally don't think he's going to be 100% because of the fact that he sat out so many weeks, and it is a foot fracture for such a big running back.
He brings up all the points there at the end of the day. Like for Derrick Henry at this point, we know he's the key to their success. Like the Titans are going to obviously try to win this week, and they have a good chance. They have a good chance to because it's the Texans, but they did lose to the Texans earlier this season, so who knows? But my thing is the fact that like they want to get the bye because that's one extra week of being able to rest Derrick Henry. So, but to Dame's point, like the second Derrick Henry lines up, everyone's going to be focusing on him. Everyone's going to be gunning for him. Like you're going to force Ryan Tannehill to have to win the game. And Ryan Tannehill, I do not care if he's looked better since he's become a Titan. I do not care what crazy Titans fans thinks. I do not care what the casual NFL fan thinks that he's not that bad of a quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is not a quarterback that can win you a Super Bowl by being the guy. He is not. So maybe they could win a game. Maybe they win 2 games. But they're not winning that last one when it's most important. And I personally speaking, I would love if the Titans get eliminated in the first round. I want 2 things to happen within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I want the Pittsburgh Steelers to completely miss the playoffs. I want the Tennessee Titans to lose in the very first game of their playoff run. That's what I want. If that could happen, geez, I don't need anything else good to happen to me for 2022. I don't. Well, one actually good thing, but semantics. Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Wow. I mean, I do not want to see Big Ben in the playoffs, bro. Just
I swear to God,
quits, brother.
I swear to God, if we see Big Ben in the playoffs just weeks after it took him 46 bleeping passes to pass for 143 yards, I'm gonna lose my mind. I had to cut Steelers VO for work. You know how painful it was for me to have to do that? I sold my soul, boys. And I'm mad.
I mean, yeah. I would also add Tom Brady getting eliminated in the first round to that wish list, Jurg. But yeah, I mean, look, I think we're in for a stacked playoffs. I'm just happy it's here. I mean, the season went by so quick. But yeah, I think that's it for this week. Yeah, what a stacked week, fellas. Phenomenal job as always. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
You guys already know it is the SomeWhatSports Instagram page where we post our predictions, and we are going to be having, of course, the final week of predictions being posted up prior to the game's beginning. It's going to be a fun time. The winner of the regular season predictions will be announced on the pod next week, and you guys will get to see who won this gentleman's agreement between the three of us. We're all gentlemen. We're all going to take it in stride, and we'll see who wins, and we'll see who won this high stakes battle of no one gets anything for winning except personal pride. But sometimes that's all we need. But of course, follow us there. We get all the constant updates. Of course, we'll also be being active come playoff time as well. And of course, you're listening to us already, but make sure you listen to us here on the YouTube channel, Somewhat Sports YouTube. This is the place to be. Bring in the new year with adding this to your list of podcasts you listen to and making this the premier sports podcast that you listen to for all of 2022 and beyond.
Wow, beautifully said as always, Jurg. One of these days, Dame should close us off. How about that? Yeah. But yeah, as always, Dame and Jurg, Titans, they does this for a living. Let's go, the goats. To our listeners listening, thank you if you made it all this way. And until next time, peace.
Peace.